I think it's really important to over communicate those things. And then I think it's also important in that same factor to communicate your prices with the client in advance.
At least once a year, if not sooner, especially if you're building on social media and you're building clientele behind the chair. I think posting things more often as updates because people are new to you constantly is really, really important.
First of all, separating value from worth. Your worth as a person has nothing to do with the value of what a client will pay for their services.
Hello, everyone who's joining us. We are so glad to have you back for another episode of Successful Stylist Academy podcast. I'm Drea. I'm hanging out with Ambrosia. So we have been sharing topics this season that have come straight from our coaching collective. So that's been really fun to take those directly from there and bring them to you guys. We know if those are popping up in those coaching sessions that they are also coming up on a regular basis for you guys. We have something really, really exciting that before we get started, we want to invite you guys to be a part of. And that is our 10-day business challenge. And you'll be able to look in the show notes and find out all the details and join and be a part of that. So we definitely want to invite and encourage you guys to do that. And we want to say a big thank you to those of you who have been hanging out, listening, a part of the Successful Stylist Academy community. We're super grateful for each of you. And your reviews help. They help us to grow. They help us to keep sharing with you guys, showing up for you guys, and helping more people like you find us. So thank you for that. And now I'm just going to kind of jump right into our question and say hello and pass it over to Ambrosia. And the question that we're talking about today is, what's the best way to start raising my prices? What do you think about that, Ambrosia?
Oh man, this is a good topic. So we talked a little bit about this in our last group coaching container, which had mostly salon owners inside of it. And I know we always reach that point at a certain time of year where we start to really reevaluate whether or not we're charging enough, what we're covering our costs and all those things. And so one of the things I want to prompt in you to think about is, while you're evaluating your costs and your profit margins, I really want you to review everything in a snapshot. What are your expenses? I want you to include your product costs, overhead, and then any recent increases as well. And then this will help you align and maintain a healthy profit margin. So I want you to keep that in mind first. And then the second step that I would want you to do is to do some more market research. It's always good to revisit. And this doesn't have to take too much time, but research the pricing trends in your area, and then just make sure that you are sticking within the beauty industry brackets, basically, in your area. You don't want to price yourself out, and you also don't want to underprice yourself too much. So you want to kind of stay in the general area. My suggestion is to look around your same zip code and surrounding zip codes. Don't go too far out of your area. The other thing I always like to look at is your demographic. So look at your target audience, look at your demographic, and see what the average median salary is in your area. And that's all public view. So that's a good thing for you to start with just once you are evaluating your costs, once you're looking at your profit margin, and then you're evaluating your expenses. Then I also want you to do a little bit of research and just see where things are. More than likely, if you're doing this on an annual basis like I do, you're going to kind of see what is changing and growing and turning. But I really want you to keep your finger on that pulse a little bit to see what's happening around you. So that way you don't start to slowly slip, because dimes equal dollars, right? That all adds up. And in the long term, I really want you to just be ahead of things and to be aware of what's happening in the trends. And then understanding what similar services are being priced so that you know that you're still being competitive, but you're not outpricing yourself, or you're not doing it too preemptively. So those are the two things I really want you to focus on before you actually do the price increase. And the next step I want to talk about with you is communicating that. But I'm going to pass it back over to Drea, because I know that she's got some points for you guys too.
I freaking love your brain. Before I continue being a part of this conversation, any of you who are listening, will you do me a favor if you're not driving and just put your hand up if this is one of your least favorite things to deal with, to figure out, to talk about, to think about, because my hand is up in that chat with you guys as well. Yeah, this is not a fun thing for me. So I know Ambrosia's like, this is a great topic. It is, because it's a necessary topic, but it is one of my least favorites. So I just want to let you know, if you're part of that group, I'm part of that group. And yes, so I think this is something where we kind of have to take a few steps back to take steps forward. Ambrosia mentioned a few really, really great points within that. And I think there's two things that happen. A lot of people don't raise their prices for a really long time. And whether it's fear or lack of consistency or an organizational system to help you keep track of it, like whatever the reason is, I feel like there's people who haven't raised their prices forever, hardly ever raise their prices. And then inflation happens and things go up, and you almost start to resent your client or what you're doing, or you start wanting to cut corners with what you do because you're not really receiving the value that you should for the work that you're doing. And then the other side of that is there are some hairstylists I find that are going into the industry and they are a beginner stylist and they're not even charging intermediate stylist prices. They're charging like a senior stylist, a veteran stylist pricing system, and they're pricing themselves out and they're not being able to rebook because they don't have the experience or quite the skill set. I know there are always exceptions to the rules, you guys, but in general, that are pricing themselves out because they're coming in with a bang and they're kind of focused on that. So I think finding what is a little bit of that happy medium and coming one side or coming, a little bit to the other side. So one thing that I would love for you to ask yourself these questions when you're thinking about raising your prices: and how long have you been in the business? What percentage of clients are rebooking with you? And what does your experience reflect with the clients that are walking out of your chair? Because although your salon may not have this system in place, kind of think of it. Am I a beginner stylist? Am I an intermediate stylist? Or am I a senior stylist? Because I do want to encourage you to start right off the bat with doing regular, at least annual price increases. Because if you don't do them and then you try to start doing them all at once, or you're like, oh, I didn't, my story was I didn't raise my prices for 10 years. And then honestly, I should have been raising people, like doubling people's prices. And I couldn't do that. So then I played catch up for a lot of years.
Dang.
And had these new clients at the prices that they were supposed to be at. So I'm just being really transparent because this isn't my favorite thing, numbers in general. But I have new clients at the prices that they should be at. And then I have clients who I love that I've been doing for 22 years who still aren't quite where I should have them because for a decade, I didn't raise my prices. I never want that to be somebody else's story. So I do want to encourage you to start off deciding, like, I'm going to have an annual price increase. But based upon, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or senior stylist, I think is important. I think some new stylists are pricing themselves out and charging already what senior stylists are charging. And then partly that's because senior stylists should have been raising their prices more than they should have. So,
Yep.
There's a little bit of both in that. And, with that, I do want to my second point is similar to Ambrosia's first point. So I'm just going to carry on for another minute, if that's okay, Ambrosia.
Of course, please do. Yes.
And that's just like not guessing on your prices or emotionally charging, because we're in an emotionally driven industry. We enjoy, like a lot of us enjoy our clients. We love what we do. We're creatives and numbers are a little bit secondary. So we're like, oh, I think I should charge this much for that. Like based on what? And this really, really helped me. It wasn't fun for me, but it helped me just to really decide what my prices should be, not based on any type of feeling or what I know my client situation is or what I've charged, previously in the past. And that's just really finding out what your cost of goods are. So if that's something that you have never done as a stylist, like finding out, like if I add my license, if I add my station rent, if I add in all of my product costs, like how much color I'm mixing, like what exactly does it cost to do a touch-up? What exactly does it cost for you to do a balayage service? What exactly does it cost for you to do a haircut? On and on. So finding out what your cost of goods are, and then finding out how, and adding that with the time you're spending and what that value needs to look like for you, related to how that looks as a beginning, intermediate, or senior stylist, along with the industry prices in your area, I think is going to help you come up with that. But if you are just skipping the cost of goods and you're like, what are the prices in my area? What do I want to be making? I think that you're missing that foundational part. So I do want to encourage you to do that if you haven't done that before. And along with that, something I've been doing probably maybe only for the last 7 years, embarrassingly enough, is extra charges may apply, right? So these are my prices, and I have figured them out based upon math and science and the value that I'm putting towards the service and the experience that I have in the industry. Is extra charges might apply for hair length, density, if I'm working over a 3-hour time period, or if I have to mix additional lightener, glaze, or color, and that is charged like per ounce or per, depending on how you measure your color. And you want to make sure that you have that conversation, or you let your clients know that. So you can say, I had to mix 1 extra bowl of lightener. So I think that those are really foundational things that you have to walk through before you even determine what your prices are, and then what they in turn should be raised to.
Great points. I think a value is a word that I heard you say a couple of times. And I think there's something in our industry right now that we're confusing value for worth. The worth of us as a person has nothing to do with the value of what we're charging our clients. And those rates, I think if we separate that from us as a person, it's easier for us also then to separate technical from communication. So I want you to start thinking of those two things as a very separate beast. Maybe you are a niche stylist and you're offering extensions and you can just bang them out. Like, you are so good at it that you are in high demand. That doesn't mean that you should be charging less than somebody who doesn't do it as often. Like, if anything, if that's your niche service that you're offering and you're really good at it and you're pre-booking, that's the reason why pre-booking is such an important thing. But that's a whole different podcast. We're going to talk about that another time, because that was another thing that came up in our group coaching. And as a side note, I would say, if you're listening to this and you haven't been a part of our group coaching containers, this is your official invitation, because we do get into the nitty-gritty. We talk about percentages. We talk about the key indicators that you really want to focus on. So that way you're not guessing, because guessing is expensive. Guessing can lose money, can lose business, can lose time, all those things. So instead of guessing, I want you to feel 100% confident when you are ready to increase your prices, change your niche, expand, and change anything in your business. So that way you're not pulling the rug, so to speak, from somebody. The main thing is value here. And I really want you to focus on communicating that value to your client. When you are clearly communicating the value of the services that you're offering, I really want you to get into the actuals of any improvements that you're making, any additional offers, any investments in your skills and the products and the things that you're offering. A client only knows what they know. And if you are sharing with them your vast knowledge, your understanding, how you're growing, especially if you're hitting that pre-booking indicator that we talked about or I mentioned earlier, I think it's really important to consider all of these things in the process, because as you're communicating the value of your service, I want you also to help a client understand that there are many different avenues that they may have never known. A lot of times clients will sit down in a chair. They're getting the service that they booked the service for, not even knowing that, oh my gosh, you offer extensions? I didn't even know that. You offer haircutting as well? You have a bundle for that? I think it's really important to over communicate those things. And then I think it's also important in that same factor to communicate your prices with the client in advance. If you just stick it to them the minute they sit down in your chair, they're not going to have a reaction to it while they're sitting there, but trust me, it's festering. And when they leave, they're going to feel it's going to be off-putting. It's going to be upsetting because they may have only expected to pay $150. That's all they had in their pocket. That's all that they were knowing to pay because that's what they paid with you historically. And then all of a sudden you're charging them $175 without saying something to them. That can lose a client in an instant, even if they've been with you for 10 years. That is how fragile our relationships can be. So that's why I really want you to start focusing on, first of all, separating value from worth. Your worth as a person has nothing to do with the value of what a client will pay for their services. Secondly, I want you to think about how you can communicate clearly that value to your client. And I want you to give them a heads up. So that would mean that you're going to do a gradual price increase. Most of the people that we see inside of our container, they are either self-independent, they're self-employed, or they have a salon and they want to expand. Or they want to find more ways to be away from the chair and still make the same amount, if not more. And so one of the things that we look at is, what value are you offering to your clients and what do your indicators look like? So we look at those together. What I've noticed in working with a lot of self-independent, self-employed is exactly the same story that Drea was just mentioning. And it's that they establish a clientele almost to the point where it feels like a friendship. And then it starts to derail because we don't increase our prices. And then all of a sudden, 5, 7, 10 years go by and we have not increased our prices. And we're only charging the new clients that come in to see us our new prices. So then there is a huge flux between existing and new clients. And heaven forbid, they would all speak to one another and find out that you're playing favoritism and that you're rewarding people who have been with you for a long time and that you're gouging people who are brand new. And that's how it's going to feel to them. So level out the playing field and do gradual price increases. We do have a specific number that we recommend inside of our container that we talk about more. That's a whole different subject, but I will say to you this: if you don't communicate properly with a client, no matter how much you increase your price or when, you're going to lose that client if you don't do it in a way that's going to make them feel like they're getting benefit from it. It should not be about your benefit as a provider. It also needs to be a benefit to the client. Otherwise, they're just going to feel like they have been price gouged or that they are paying more for less. And so we want to make sure that we keep that open line of communication open. I would love to talk about more about this because there's so much that gets wrapped up in our psychology and there's so much that goes into our emotion that kind of gets in the way. It becomes like this weighted cloud that we can't see past. So I really want to make sure that you try to mitigate by removing that emotional cloud for a moment and really looking at a snapshot of the health of your business and what you're providing to your clients and why, and then start speaking to that. And that makes it so much easier to look at your price when it comes to that too.
Yeah, I really love that you spoke to the value versus the worth. I'm like, we can go home now. Like that was the point that needed to be shared today. So take that and put it in your pocket, everybody. But okay, so let's say you've done all the work. So you've laid the foundation, you know what your cost of goods are, you've attached a value to it, not based on worth for the service that you're going to give. So then where do we go from here, right? What do we do next? So I would say determine what your prices are and make them plain, meaning you're going to put them in writing. What I like to do is November 1st, I like to post online as well as on my station that I will be having a price increase. I put a thank you to my clients on there, but it is very short thank you. Usually there's a picture of me like working on hair on there, and I let them know what that price increase is going to look like and the date that it's going to be effective. So I usually post November 1st, and the effective price increase is usually their first appointment when they meet in January. So January 1st is when I put that effective date. So I like to do that. And then once I pull that down January 1st, I put up my new annual updated menu. So then all of my prices and all of my services are on there. So just like Ambrosia mentioned, sometimes a client sits down, they book something with you and they didn't realize everything else that you offer. So I think at least once a year, if not sooner, especially if you're building on social media and you're building clientele behind the chair, I think posting things more often as updates because people are new to you constantly is really, really important. I do a lot of yearly updates now that I do kind of have a full clientele. I am still accepting new clients. Sometimes I don't put my pricing on social media, but I think that's also because I'm not really trying to build at this point. I'm just accepting some special referrals from my current clients. So that's kind of like how that might look a little bit different. We can't be scared to have these conversations, and our clients respect us more. And not only do they respect us more, but it benefits them more to have that on the front end, to have that communication. I like to say before they leave, as I'm telling them happy holidays and happy new year and see you next year, like, I just wanted to let you know for your next appointment, it will reflect the price increase. I only want there to be good surprises. So I just wanted to, just to let you know of that. And thank you so much for like budgeting me in and spending your time and like your year with me and trusting me with your hair. So that's kind of how I go about having that conversation. So if a client comes in that's been my client and they are talking about getting a secondary color in their hair, or I'm going to need to do lightener through the ends, and I usually just mix for like some type of balayage or highlight touch up, I let them know, no problem. I would love to do that. I might end up keeping you for a little bit longer today if that works with your schedule. And paired with that, I will need to mix a little bit more lightener. So we're looking at this much more, totaling your appointment cost at this. Is that something that you're comfortable with today, or did you want to wait on that? I work with, stylists, and they'll be in the back. And if they didn't have that conversation, they're sick to their stomach the whole time. They're not sure what they're going to charge. They didn't tell them. They don't know if they know it's that much. Like, just get it out of the way. Most clients are happy to have that conversation with you too and appreciate the clarity. And I always try to just think like, what would I want? Like as a client, would I want to know? Like I've been put in times when I would see a stylist and I'd go back to see them, I didn't feel like I had anything additional done and the price was completely different. And I'd be like, well, I guess I'm going to take $150 to $250 or plan on that because I don't really know what this person's going to charge me because they're never consistent, which is another piece to that. And I would say consistency. So I use a booking system. I know some stylists are still booking, on an actual book. But regardless of how you choose to run your business, the booking system really helps me to stay organized. I'm able to put my client notes in there. I'm able to have client email list in there if I need to get a hold of them, send a thank you, send a birthday, whatever. That is all there for me, and I can keep it in one place. And it helps me just to mainstream things. But I also have my prices in there. I have my prices with the actual, I usually do it by the year. So it's like every time, if the price changed that year, then the first time I charge them that new price, I change the date of the year in there. So I know now I have charged them this price for this year. This is their prices for that. And I will slightly change that. If there's going to be any additional costs added in, then I will have a new note on there. But you want to be consistent with it, because if you have raised your prices, you don't want to charge them less again the next time, because then you're just completely defeating the purpose. And I've seen that, and I've been guilty of it as well. And then on the flip side of that, you don't want to communicate well with a client and then not make a note and forget and then overcharge them the next time as well, because that's not fair to them.
So we have a checklist of things that we kind of cover inside of group coaching whenever we go into topics like this. And the pricing thing can be really heavy. It can be pretty hefty. And it's also something that we can't possibly discuss everything in the 90 minutes because every single person's scenario might be slightly different. So I'll just talk about a couple of those things from that checklist that I would really consider when you're actually ready to increase your prices. So number one, avoid peak seasons. Like you really want to steer clear of any holidays or any period where it's going to be just really busy months and budgets might already be tight. The next thing to consider is to do it during quieter times. Early spring or fall might be more receptive periods. And then the other thing you want to do is give ample notification. So you want to notify your clients 4 to 6 weeks in advance. Why that period of time? Because that's about the average period of turnover that clients come back in to see us again. And then lastly, I would say once you do actually increase your prices, I truly believe that it's best to give your clients a heads up that actually come in to see you and to let them know that your prices have gone up. Let them know that you're going to go ahead and honor your old pricing to them this time and that next time it will be this. There are so many other things that we could dive into, I think, as far as like logistics go, how we do it, the amount that you should increase it to, all that stuff that we would love to dive into. So I'm hoping to see you in the next container, but Drea, I'll let you go ahead and shut it down. And I want to thank all you guys for just being here and being a part of this process and really just paying attention to your business and wanting to make it better. And I think that's the main thing here. This is what ties us all together, that I love that we share this equal passion for making a better business, making a better industry, and being the best that we possibly can be to our industry. And that's what this is all about.
I do love that you said talking about different solutions, and it was in my notes and I didn't even say it. But one thing that I do like to discuss with my clients, because I don't want them to feel like they can't come in if they can't pay these new prices. And my clients are important to me. I've had most of them for 20 years. So that friendship client line is very muddy, very, very muddy. So I do like to let them know. I know usually we do a highlight every time. We can actually do a touch up and a glaze every other time, or we could possibly do some baby lights around the face. And then every third time we could do. As we raise our prices, I think offering gratitude for our clients that we do have is really, really important. Being able to raise our prices in confident humility, I think, is a really beautiful balance. I always think, if I sat in the chair and I received this service and paid this much, like, what would my feeling and my response be? And I want to make sure that my client is getting the experience that I would want to receive. And I really like to think about that and consider that in how I'm going to invest in myself and my growth to be better for my clients, while I'm also figuring out what that price increase is going to look like. Because I do think to have longevity and have a successful business, all of those things really do go hand in hand. But we want to thank you. I know Ambrosia said a beautiful, beautiful thank you. We're so glad that you're here. We're here for you. We love having these conversations. If you guys have questions, please ask them, put them in the notes, visit us online, get involved in maybe signing up for the waiting list for our next coaching collective. We dive in much, much deeper in those. It's a really special thing. It's one of my favorite things that we actually do here at Successful Stylist Academy. And in the meantime, we just want to keep always encouraging you to dream big, set goals, and take action. And we will talk to you soon.